What up, sports fans? Waxon Wednesday. Jake Waxman, Tyler Level, let two guys talk sports. Let's go. I'll start off with the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm a big fan of Joe Burrow, don't get me wrong. So that's part of the reason I'm talking about the Bengals. Obviously, it's not been the start to the season that they didn't have the start to the season that they wanted. Of course, Joe Burrow had a bit of an injury that he aggravated in one such game, and that was bothering him. That's been bothering him for a good bit of the season, and that's part of the reason the Bengals have not been as good as they have been, especially on offense. But here's some good news if you're a Bengals fan. Joe Burrow has gotten healthy, and the Bengals look like they are finding their stride. After beating the Buffalo Bills in a close game, I think we're starting to see the return of the Cincinnati Bengals we expected. Now here's the catch. They still got a long ways to go to get into the playoff race. They got to win. That AFC North is stacked right now. Baltimore leads the way. Pittsburgh's doing just well, and Cleveland is overperforming expectations. So it's going to be tough for Cincinnati to get back into the postseason spot. I could see them at this point. I probably see them making the playoffs as a wild card spot. I think they can get back in it if they win enough games, and if they can beat their divisional foes, of course. And right now, hey, they're starting to play their best, so that's the good news. You got Joe Burrow is starting to return to form. He's starting to get the ball to Jamar Chase. The Bengals defense, no slouch. They're very underrated again. So, despite the rough start, things are coming together finally for the Bengals. Question is, will it be too little too late, or will they still make the playoffs? That will be the big question. But so far, after a good win in Buffalo, and they beat the 49ers too, who are still a good team, even though they've been on kind of a losing streak. Although the Bengals handed them their third straight loss. But still, I got a good feeling about this Bengals team. If they can win most, if not all, their games going forward, they'll have a strong chance of getting into the postseason again. And with the way they're playing and reestablishing themselves, I think they got a good chance of getting back to the postseason. Still plenty of time for Cincinnati. So, just my thoughts on the Bengals. Despite the rough start of the season, they're starting to come into their element. All right. And now, here we are on to basketball season, or college hoop season, finally upon us. Games got underway, so you're probably all wondering, or some of you might be wondering, hey, Jake, what are you thinking about your Boilermakers? Like, what do you think? You know what? Obviously, I think this is going to be an interesting season. You know, we all know the obvious questions. You know, can they get farther in the tournament this round? Not get upset by a double-digit seed. For the record, I haven't forgotten about FDU. That crap stays with you, being a Purdue fan. But I'm doing my best to put it behind me. Honestly, not thinking too much on it. So now, but what's really on my mind is I look at their first game on the season, and it was a good first game. And of course, it doesn't answer a lot of questions about how Purdue will do as a team this year, but the one thing that I look at with great curiosity is how is Matt Painter going to balance out the playing time, the minutes by every player? Because what I saw in that game against Samford, the first game of the year against Samford, Matt Painter put a lot of different players, like I think 9 or 10 different players on the floor. Of course, more than that if you count the walk-ons, but all the starters got some minutes. And there were some guys like Miles Colvin, Camden Heide, and trying to remember his name. Ryan Waddell, that's another name, of course. And Lance Jones, that's the name. Those guys got a lot of minutes. Now, Lance Jones, I'm not surprised that he got quite a few minutes, and I thought he did a really good job with the press, to be honest. But guys like Camden Heide and Miles Colvin, who I mentioned, not guys who I thought would get a lot of minutes in this game, they got quite a few, and they were productive minutes. They got more minutes than some of the seniors, like Ethan Morton and even Mason Gillis, just to name a few. Zach Edey got a lot of rest in that game. So he only scored 16 points, but I think they were resting him. So Matt Painter trying a lot of different things in a contest like that. And, of course, they're playing Morehead State in 2 days from now, so it wouldn't surprise me to see Matt Painter doing more of this. So I think he's preparing this team, this lineup. So it's not quite finalized, but this is a good problem for Purdue to have. So what that tells me is this team may be deeper than teams Purdue has had in the past. And so Matt Painter's trying to solve the problem of, okay, who do I give the majority of minutes to, based on the productivity and all that stuff. And who's ready to handle the minutes. Now, I thought Colvin might... Now, there was some talk that... Now, I won't say I thought it, but there was some talk that Miles Colvin might redshirt. That's not going to happen from what I saw. I think he is full go this season, which I think is, in the long run, is going to benefit the Boilermakers due to Colvin's athleticism. And Purdue's been... one of the big reasons Purdue keeps getting upset in the NCAA tournament is due to lack of athleticism. And, of course, the press, as I mentioned. So, I thought Purdue, at instances in the game... They did better against the press. Still a lot of work to do against the press, but I thought they did better, thanks to guys like Lance Jones, who attacked it using full speed. They'd go fast and attack the middle, That Purdue could still do better attacking the middle, but Lance Jones having that speed to attack the press helps a lot. And finally, in athleticism, as I mentioned, Purdue's added some athleticism. I mentioned Miles Colvin. Lance Jones, the transfer from SIU, he's athletic, and same with Camden Heide. Those are all athletic guys, and that a little bit will help Purdue out in the long run. So now, questions going forward, though. Does Purdue have enough of that athleticism and that moxie to make a deep tournament run this year? And have they learned enough from bad losses in the past to help them get better against the press? So far, that remains to be seen. All right, it's just one game. Don't need to overreact. Still one game. Still a lot to learn. Still a lot of questions to answer for Purdue basketball. But there were plenty of guys that I was impressed with. Those three guys, Lance Jones, Cam Heide, and Miles Colvin. I was impressed with those guys and the minutes that they delivered for Purdue. And I liked what I saw from Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer as well. They had a really good game, as did Zach Edey. But again, it's one game. Granted, it was against a solid opponent in Samford, who, from what I've heard, is a KenPom top 120 opponent, from what I've read. But still early. Okay, still a long ways to go for Purdue basketball. But these are just some of the things on my mind while I've been thinking about Purdue basketball. I've been thinking about how these lineups going to look. It's a problem for Matt Painter's got to solve, but it's a good problem to have so far. All right, and now, speaking of basketball, we'll focus on the rest of the Big Ten, and I'll make some predictions on what I think's going to happen. Like who I think's going to win the Big Ten this year, and how many Big Ten teams are going to make it, and my thoughts on all the teams. So, I've mentioned Purdue and all the things. Of course, there's Michigan State. A lot of people have been picking them to win the Big Ten. And first game of the year, they get upset by James Madison, the Dukes of James Madison University. And this game was in East Lansing. So my thoughts on that is, wow, what an effort by James Madison. March Madness November edition. Now, it's no doubt, it's a big-time upset, regular season upset. One very big regular season upset. Now, that being said, I think Michigan State's going to be fine, all right? They'll still do very well, and I think they will still challenge for a Big Ten title. But they got some work to do, and especially with production, okay? There was one guy, I can't remember his name, but he was scoring most of the points for Michigan State. They need Michigan State, from what I understand, from what I saw in that game, they need others to step up throughout the season to score more points. If they're going to repeat what they did last year, say in the NCAA tournament, and go farther, like Final Four, for example. They need more out of their bench and their young players. A lot of huge expectations for Michigan State. So, and I think they got the pieces to make a deep tournament run once again. I don't think this loss is going to affect them in all the wrong ways. They'll learn from it, and they'll grow from it. Knowing Tom Izzo as a coach, too. Of course, there's Illinois, who I think could also... Now, a lot of people are saying this is a 2-horse race between Purdue and Michigan State. There's a part of me that thinks this might be a 3-horse race. Let's not count out Illinois. They got some depth, too. I mean, you got Terrence Sharp on this team, and I will say this. There was a young kid by the name of Drayvon Gibbs-Lawhorn, who had a very good first game. His first game in the Illinois Orange, he scored 18 points. So, good start for that young freshman. So, Illinois, that team may be more deep than people give it credit for. And there's a lot a lot of good don't get me wrong, good players on that Illinois team, and I think they will be very strong this year. I'd be shocked if Illinois is not at the very least a top 4 team in the Big Ten this year. Top 3, actually. So, right there, I just made prediction. Here's what. All right, so I think the top 3, I will say this, is going to be Purdue, Michigan State, and Illinois. And as for the now, teams to also watch out for. Now, can't overlook Indiana. They're going to be very young this year, but they'll have talent. And I think they could still do a lot of damage in Big Ten play and maybe surprise some people in the tournament this season. And also, Maryland, tough team to play in their own house. With Jameer Young coming back, they'll be good once again. I think they'll probably be I think they'll be a top 4 team. And then I mentioned other teams that want. So those are just some other teams that I think Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin looks like a team that could bounce back this year. Connor Easogen returns and Chucky Hepburn returns and should take strides forward. Also, Northwestern, they lost a bit of production, but they still got Boo Buie. They'll be tough. Ohio State, can they bounce back? Can Michigan bounce back? So many questions, What can we expect? And Iowa, how will they do it? Penn State, are they doomed for regression this season after losing Micah Shrewsbury? And then Minnesota and Nebraska, what goals do they have? And then there's Michigan, of course. Is this Juwan Howard's last chance? So many questions with these Big Ten teams. So I'll get right to this. Who do I think is going to be the Big Ten champion? Purdue won it last year, and I am going to say it's going to be a closer race this year, but I think I'm going to go with Purdue going back-to-back in the Big Ten championship category. I think they win another one back-to-back. It would also not surprise me if they split it with a team like Michigan State or Illinois. Maybe those 3 teams split a time. It would not surprise me. It's going to be very close, I think, between Purdue, Michigan State, and Illinois. I'll go with Purdue winning the Big Ten championship. Now, outright, we'll see. Like I said, I think it's going to be a closer race between those schools again, and it would not surprise me if it's a split. And it would not surprise me if Purdue does not win the Big Ten championship, and if it's between Illinois and Michigan State. But I do think one of those 3 is going to win the Big Ten, or maybe 2 of those 3. And as for the rest, now, final question now. How many Big Ten teams are going to make the tournament this year? Ooh. This is really tough. My gut is telling me only 7 this time, but I'm going to go with 8. I think it's going to be close. I mean, here's what I think. Purdue, Michigan State, Illinois, those will be tournament teams. Maryland will be a tournament team. I also think Indiana, despite their youth, they will be a tournament team. And now for the other 3, I think Wisconsin has a bounce-back season and gets back in the NCAA tournament. And I'm going to say the same for Ohio State. Come on, too much talent on that Ohio State team to miss the tournament. So, and I think Holtman has a bounce-back season, and so does Ohio State. They got Bruce Thornton returning, and a couple other added pieces, and a really nice class coming in. So, I think, and also Zed Key's returning. So, I think, and Jamison Battle, they added him in the transfer portal. I think that'll be enough for Ohio State to get back into the NCAA tournament. And the final Big Ten team that I think gets in, I'll go with Northwestern. I think they will have just enough, and Boo Buie will go off. And will do just enough to will this Northwestern team into the NCAA tournament. I don't think they'll be as good as they were last year. It's tough to repeat. And as I mentioned, same with Purdue. It'll be tough. It'll be tough to repeat going back to back in Big Ten championships. So that's it. So again, I'll say this. So Purdue, Michigan State, Illinois, Maryland, Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Northwestern. Those are the 8 Big Ten teams that I think will get in the tournament. Now, as for the rest of the field, I forgot to mention Rutgers. Cliff Amore returns, and he's talented guy, and they've got some pieces that could have a breakout season. The problem I have with Rutgers is Here's the deal. They'll give Purdue a hard time this season, okay? No doubt about that. I wouldn't be surprised to see them upset Purdue once again because they get Purdue all sorts of fits when the two sides play. Problem I have with Rutgers is they're just inconsistent. Even with the talent that they've had in the past, they've struggled with consistency. Steve Peichel is a fantastic coach. If they could nail down the consistency, they'd be a tournament team, and I would put them as a tournament team. But sometimes you just don't know what to expect out of a team like Rutgers. And then Iowa, a team that I mentioned, that's a team Iowa, a team that made the tournament last year, but I think they lost quite a bit from last season. And while they do have some good players coming in, I think it's going to be a rebuilding season for Fran McCaffrey and company. But they'll have some good players and some guys to watch, but it's going to be tough for them to get back in the tournament this year. And same with Penn State. Like I said, they lost some talented players to like graduation or the portal or even to the NBA draft. And I mentioned Jordan Pickett, the walking bucket as they call him. They lost him to the NBA draft. And of course the biggest loss for Penn State and the Nittany Lions was Micah Shrewsbury. He's now the coach at Notre Dame. So a new coach at Penn State, so it wouldn't surprise me if this is a rebuilding year for Penn State. Michigan, okay, talented players at Michigan. I have no question about it. I think there's a lot of talent at Michigan, but I'm not sure that Juwan Howard is the guy for Michigan. And this is probably going to be... Wouldn't surprise me if this is his last chance, or it also wouldn't surprise me if he gets one more after this, and if he doesn't do well the next year, then he's gone. But he really has to take strides forward this year, or his job may be in jeopardy. So I trust the talent of Michigan. I just don't trust the coaching. And then for Nebraska and Minnesota, now Keisei Tominaga is going to be one to watch in the Big Ten gameplay, but I'm just not sure Nebraska has much else to help them get to that next level. And Minnesota, the rebuild continues. So that's my Big Ten predictions for this season. All right. On to this day in sports history. And on this day, sorry about that. All right. On this day, the 8th of November, 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson signs antitrust immunity to AFL-NFL merger. All right, sports fans, that's all I got for this week's Wax on Wednesday. Thanks for watching. Jake Waxman from Two Guys Talk Sports, signing off.